Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbender, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from You Do You. I want to welcome my good friend, Dr. Kelly Burton. She's the CEO of Nexus Research and also the founder of Founders of Color. And I'm excited to have you on the show again, Kelly. How are you?
I'm fantastic, honey. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm stable and everyone's healthy and we're doing the work, right? So that means we're all doing well. But I thought it's so important to have this conversation with you, because we had it in private over the phone a couple of weeks ago, you know, when we noticed how reactive the corporate sector and also the philanthropy sector and all sectors really, you know, have been in the aftermath of the brutal, you know, murder of George Floyd, in terms of trying to, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's propelling them to throw money at, you know, Black initiatives and causes and, you know, communities of color, whatever you want to call it, you know. But again, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. It's like, let's fix it with money, right?
Yeah.
And so then
white guilt money.
Exactly. And so then, you know, we were talking about this again privately over the phone, having our little vent fest. And
our mental health sessions is what I like.
Yes, exactly. That's what keeps us together and sane. But you mentioned to me that you wanted to write a piece about it, but you're like, no, I'm not even going to go there because it's not going to be pretty. And I'm like, no, it's going to be freaking awesome. You know, we need this, please. Educate us, educate everybody, right? And you did. And I just felt like it was important not only to read it, but to have this conversation with you, because I feel like this article that you wrote on LinkedIn, creating a Black entrepreneur fund, like you're really doing this. Read this first. So you're providing like basically like a guide. Can I tell you how many organizations here locally in Central Florida I've shared this with? At least I want to say 7. At least 7. Yes, absolutely. And it'll be shared more. But I wanted to talk to you about this. I mean, why compelled you to? I know why, but I want you to tell us, right?
Yeah.
What compelled you to feel like you needed to like break it down for people?
Yeah.
You know, like if you're thinking of throwing money, you know, at these initiatives, let me break it down for you, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, because you are primary impetus for me to write this, because I was like, you know what? Somebody needs to say something. And I thought about it, right? And you're like, well, you have to write it. Write it. You need to write it. So I'm like, Sammy, I don't know. I just got so much going on. And you're like, and then you followed up with the text. And just like, look, you're writing this, right? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I am.
And you did overnight.
And I did. Because it's in me. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything that I needed to think about or mull over. Or I've been steeped in this work for the last 15 years. Like I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, Semi. And there's so much more ugly than there is good. And that sounds awful. But a lot of these foundations, corporations are super reckless with these contributions that are dedicated towards communities of color. And I'm calling you out, because you making the commitment is just step one. Like, that's just the bare minimum that you can do. in some ways, it's almost an insult because you should be doing the work on an ongoing basis, but because you know you're not, and you know that if people go digging and looking under the hood, they're going to find how inequitable your operation really is and how you perpetuate the same BS within your organization that's being perpetuated on the streets of America today. And so I wanted to take a moment to say, okay, XYZ company, because currently, according to the Plug, which is an amazing organization, Black female led. They do a lot of research and original journalism directed towards kind of the Black tech space. And they've identified like over $50 million in commitments that have been called out by a lot of these corporations. But it's like there's no accountability mechanism. So you can announce it. We don't know if you ever spent the money, how you spent the money, who you spent the money with. And a lot of the money goes to kind of traditional legacy organizations that have brand cachet. So you can say, oh, I gave my money to the NAACP. Well, that's great. But is the NAACP working on the ground around these issues? Is NAACP like really advancing conversations around innovation? Yeah, I don't think so. But you got your brand cachet. You're able to check your box and you are able to go back to business as usual. So I was like, I'm over it. I'm just so over it. Somebody needs to call it out. And now you can't say that nobody didn't tell you, because over the last, I'd say 5 years, there have been maybe a half dozen major initiatives, even before the George Floyd incident and the racial uprising, that were dedicated Black funds. Several of them were led by kind of major equity funds and major banks, and they were a dismal failure, right? Nobody calls it out because you don't want to throw folks salt on these major organizations, but we at least need to call out the patterns and establish the patterns before all these other folks come on with these large 6, 7, and 8 figure commitments.
Yes, no, absolutely. And the roadmap that you're suggesting, right? You know, when I read it, I'm like, oh my God, this is like it's precise, concise, and clear. This is not too complicated. And so I just would love to quickly go through all 10, because they're all, I mean, these are, and you put, here are 10 recommendations for making good on your promises to the Black community.
That's right.
And I know you mean in general, so, you know, the people of color at large. So be strategic.
Yes, be strategic. You know, these companies, they'll spend millions of dollars on a strategic plan for everything else. But when it comes to these initiatives, there is no strategy. There is no theory of change. There is no real intellectual rigor associated with how they see the money actually delivering for the community. They don't make any investment in reaching out to thought experts or leaders in the Black community to ensure that their initiatives even make any sense. You know, so one of the a recent one that was advanced by a bank who's a major player in this space, they did like this road trip where they went from city to city and they had these conversations in these panels. A lot of this money goes to conversations, and you and I talked about this a lot. We're so sick of conversation, talking. How about for every conversation you have 3 actions? How about act, talk? Act, talk. You just want to talk. Well, tell us about the challenges facing Black women and entrepreneurs. Tell us about the challenges.
They can Google that. Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Get strategic. The same strategy that you would apply to your 5-year strategic plan of how you're going to capitalize on the marketplace. Apply that same intellectual rigor to figuring out how your 7-figure, 8-figure, 9 figures are going to make some measurable impact in the Black community.
Exactly. Goal setting. It's like goal setting, projections.
That's right.
Like just
they
go
don't have
through.
None of that.
Yes. Go. And I agree. I've seen it so many times, and it's very disappointing. Number 2, support Black-led organizations.
Yes.
But you're not talking again of the usual suspects.
No,
you're talking about
the ones on the ground.
The ones that are rolling up their sleeves.
The ones like you and me. You know what I mean? And our colleagues, the people that we know who are doing intake in these communities on an ongoing basis, who are touching folks, who, when your business is about to implode, you're on speed dial. You know, the president of XYZ long-standing Black and brown organization is not on speed dial when these entrepreneurs are about to shutter their doors. We are, right? Because we do the work with them every single day. When they have milestones, when they are able, I got an email from one of our entrepreneurs that went through our program. She was able to nearly double her revenue in a year based on a program that she'd gone through our, so they want to reach out to us and share not only their challenges, but their milestones and how they're progressing. So there are hundreds of organizations like yours and mine on the ground working with people every day, but they don't get the spotlight. They don't get the shine. They don't get the 5, 6, 7-figure commitments. And then they stay small, and then everybody has conversation around the extent to which they have any capacity. It's like, well, are you investing in them? Oh, no, you're not. And then you wonder why they have low capacity.
Right.
Yes. So, yes, we need to invest in both longstanding organizations because they have certain levers that they can pull that the smaller organizations do not. And you need to do your due diligence, go to the community, have conversations with the people. What program have you participated in? And what did you do? What's the best programming that you received? Oh, so, and amplify that.
Right.
Amplify what's already working with very little resource. Not just because you can attach glom on to some, mainstream household name and check your box. That's not enough.
Yeah, it's not about the branding all the time.
No, not about PR.
Yes. And then, so number 3 goes to support legacy organizations and startups as well. So that's like a segue. It's all very orderly. You're so logical in the way you work.
So here's where I messed up. Okay, so that was my brand that I just gave you was about number 3. So here was the logic behind number 2. Okay. So often, a lot of these large-scale organizations will go to the white intermediary and say, we want to do a DEI initiative in so-and-so community. So we're going to give you $500,000. We're going to give you $5 million over X number of years for you to deploy this program in the Black and brown community. And then they show up in my inbox, in your inbox, and say, hey, Kelly, hey, Sami, we're doing this thing. Do you know any people who can do X, Y, and Z? Or do you know any entrepreneurs that check these boxes? And I'm like, maybe, I don't know, possibly. But it's like they want to leverage our context and our contacts. So you want my context and my perspective so that can inform your strategy. And you want my contact. So you want me to share your opportunity in my newsletter or share it with my network or my listserv. But you don't want to contract with me. You don't want to incorporate me in your budget. You don't want to help me build out my capacity on the ground. And then 2-3 years out, when it's a flaming failure, and you attach it to all these other pathologies in the Black and brown community, when it was really the fact that you didn't know what the hell you were doing because you don't have any tentacles in this community. So stop going to the white-led organizations, giving them the big checks and expecting them to deploy programs in Black and brown communities for which they have no knowledge or understanding.
Yes, absolutely. And we see that a lot. A lot. Yes. And I got to tell you, I've never been a fan, and that's ass kissing is not my thing. So I don't go to those organizations they
lack humility about
and so that's it. So no, it goes the other way around. They can kiss my Puerto Rican ass. Anyway, then number 4, apply a racial equity lens. Apply a racial equity lens. Talk to me.
Yes. And so I think there's a lot of lack of understanding about what racial equity is, right? Racial equity means that we're going to do what is necessary and sufficient to close the gap, to bring people along. People talk about leveling the playing field, but if you play a sport that puts divots in the field, leveling it means coming and supplying a sufficient amount of dirt to fill the divot. It doesn't mean that we're going to come and just layer evenly over the field with dirt and everybody gets an equal amount of dirt. Well, no, because then we'll still have the same divot. A lot of people think that you can apply equality to an unequal system. That makes no sense. Like, all this time we've been practicing inequality, so today we're going to start being equal and fair. And it's like, Well, if it's going to take Black people 228 years to close the wealth gap and Latinos 125 years to close the wealth gap, how does that help us if we're behind 100 and something years or 200 and something years? Now that you already have a 200-year head start.
Right.
Now we're able to get in the race? No, that doesn't make any sense. And you expect us to catch up after you had a 300-year head start? No, that's not how this works. So we're going to have to do more. That's what equity means. You're going to have to apply disproportionate effort to address a disproportionate issue. So we need more. We don't need the same. You need to try harder to find that Black or brown hire. You have to try harder to effectively deploy this program. You have to update your underwriting criteria if you're a bank or a CDFI, right? Because you can't expect a community. So what we know is the average white child enters the world with 10 times the inherited wealth of the average Black child, 8 times the inherited wealth of the average Latino child. That wealth disparity determines every step in that child's life. The hospital they're born in, the neighborhood their parents return to, the quality of that community, the quality of the schools, the extent to which their parents have transportation to work. Every step of that child's life is conditioned by that disparity in race and disparity in wealth, right? And so if we know that, you can't have a person show up who has literally in their business had access to 1/10 or 1/8 of the resource to check the same underwriting criteria as someone who has had 10 times the resource in building out their business. That makes zero sense. So don't talk to me about leveling the bar, lowering the bar, or we don't want to make it. You need to figure it out. We can figure out how to get to the moon. I can figure out how to have, 24 count of water in my house within 24 hours. We can figure out a whole lot. Figure it out. Figure out how you create equitable strategies to help people capitalize their business or do whatever they need to do, accounting for the fact that Black and brown people are kind of trying to crawl out the ditch.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Very well said. And your report disrupts this.
Yes.
Yes.
Calls that out.
Yes, calls it out. Look it up. Dr. Kelly Burton disrupts this under Founders of Color. Because I read it, and can I tell you something? I quoted you just last week to make the point. Yeah. Anyway, I was invited to like this leadership think tank thing as the representative of the MBE community because they wanted our support. And I'm like, our support, we're trying to help each other survive this crisis. Because we can't depend on you. Are you crazy? So anyway.
So you want my support.
Oh, yes, I copied like 2 paragraphs.
God, girl,
explaining that about the wealth disparity upon birth.
That's right. So, because what happens is they want to talk about merit, and how hard you worked. Well, before a child, even anybody gets a chance to do anything, one still has 10 times, because they always want to break it down or boil it down to a merit conversation. It's a meritocracy and it's how hard you work. That's BS. That doesn't exist in a society where you can literally purchase everything is for sale. Everything. Where you sit on the plane is for sale. Where you stand in line is for sale. Where you send your kids to school, the extent to which you have help, everything is for sale. So when you live in a society where everything is for sale, that meritocracy conversation is out the window. People are buying their college kid education.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And that takes us to the next point. Point number 5. Invest in education and network building too.
Yeah, education and network building too. That's right. It's not just about money. People always want to say, "Oh, we need to get founders more money, more capital, more." Yes, they do. Yes, we need more money. We absolutely need more. We need more funding, but we also need the other things that are necessary in order to build a business. That's the education. Right? The understanding of how you build a business, because most Black and brown people enter into entrepreneurship because we don't have any options. The market is not responsive to
that happened to me.
Yeah, it happened to me too. I was like, I can't see a way forward. So it's like I'm gonna hang my shingle and give it a try. But it's not because we have degrees in business or we have MBAs or because we're experts at running a business. It's because we're good at one thing. And we have to develop all of those other skills along the way. But if there's not quality programming in place to help us understand how do we build an effective brand, how do we identify our market, our customer, what are our distribution channels, how do we effectively manage people? If we don't have education to help us to unpack that and build those muscles, it doesn't matter how much money we get, we're not going to be able to effectively deploy it, right? And so it's the education, but it's also the relationships because, I'm going through this process of writing a book and I'm leveraging my network to find a literary agent. But, you and I are very aspirational people. So we built a network over a lifetime, but most Black and brown people don't have access to a network where you can say, let me identify 5 or 6 people who can connect me to a literary agent, and that's business. A lot of business is generated based on relationships, but in a country where it's still tremendously segregated and we're segregated from those resources, from those opportunities that are primarily housed in the white community, we're shut off. And so it's about, yes, money. We need money. We need money, financial capital, but we also need social capital, and we also need educational capital.
Yes, absolutely. Number 6, deliver solutions for the 5% and the 95%.
And the 95.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was great.
So, well, thank you. Because folks want to do the light lift. They want the low hanging fruit. They want the businesses that have already scaled. So the statistic comes from the fact that 95% of Black owned businesses, 92% of Latino businesses have no employees. Now that's compared to 80% for the general population. And so if 92% and 95% of businesses of color have no employees, what are we doing to help them scale so that they can ultimately have employees? What we want to do is focus on the businesses that are the 5% or the 8%, the ones that are already scaled, the ones that are already deep into the 6 and 7 figures. Why? Because you don't have to do any heavy lifting. You don't have to do any real work. You're really just giving them access to resources that they should have access to anyway. And you're claiming credit for it, right? If you really want to move the needle, you need to get in there and you need to help that 92, 95% figure out how they build viable, scalable, sustainable business. That's the money shot. Again, I love my 5%ers, but that ain't necessarily the money shot because they're already mainstream. The money shot is the gap between the 80% and the 92, 95%. That's where we really should be digging in. That's what's going to close that gap. And there are a lot of people that just don't have an appetite for the lift that is closing that gap.
Yes. And that's the thing. It takes effort, right? And so then, and an investment of time and energy.
Yes.
Number 7, this one I really loved. Get outside help.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Honey. Well, you and I have multiple lives, right? Our careers have crisscrossed different sectors. And so before launching Founders of Color, I was a nonprofit consultant. I still have my nonprofit consultancy. We still have clients, right? And so what I know is that a lot of these companies try to activate these programs internally with staff, again, who have no idea what they are doing. And so you get in there and you look at how it's laid out and you're like, what is this? This is a mess. Oh, it's a mess because it was led by your marketing department. And what does your marketing department know about deploying a fund towards? Do you have a dedicated division that is, you know what I mean? And most of these companies, they have DEI folks, but it's like 3 people. And they have not necessarily received training on DEI because they're reaching out to you like, Kelly, can you help me understand or give me some talking points for X, Y, and Z? So my point is most large-scale companies do not have the internal talent necessary to help them execute and effectively implement race-focused programs, like culturally competent programs on the ground in Black and brown communities. Again, demonstrate some humility, identify some trusted brokers, and pay them well in the same way that you would pay somebody to come in and design your marketing strategy. Pay them fairly to execute a program if you really give a if you really give a damn about it.
You
Right?
could say it. If you really give a shit about it.
Thank you, baby. If you really give a shit about it, you need to find somebody who knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
Stop trying to offload it on your marketing intern.
Right, right, right. And it's like the investments that you put on the tangibles, right?
Yeah.
On the things you could feel, like your buildings and your pretty
Yes,
lobbies
yes,
and your artwork and all of
yes.
that.
My,
Yes.
yeah, like I wish I had the money to do a study on this, but I believe that these large scale companies spend more money on toilet paper than they
Yeah.
spend on DEI. I fundamentally believe they have a larger budget for bathroom supplies.
Yeah.
Because what does DEI look like in a major Fortune 500? It looks like one corporate executive that probably is bringing in $350,000, $400,000. God bless them.
Mm-hmm.
They have an admin. Chances are they probably share it. And then maybe one or two people in procurement, under supply and diversity, one or two people that are on the talent side, maybe 12 people across the organization, somebody who runs the EI.
That they interact with, that not that they're part of their team.
Right.
This is just
That's
that
exactly
they might collaborate.
That's right. That's
and
right.
that also might be a
That's
struggle.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because these companies never have any comprehensive plan for how they are going to incorporate DEI. It's like it lives in talent, it lives in marketing, it lives in procurement, and then they never talk. There's never any conversation, and the head of DEI, who is the VP of DEI, doesn't have any control over procurement. It's nuts. It's just so incongruent. Mm-hmm. And there's no accountability. So yes, that's what that's about. Like, have some humility. If you really give a shit about it, hire experts who can help you to effectively deploy it on the ground.
Yes. Yep. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, focus on impact.
Yes.
Let's measure, right?
Measure.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you don't measure it, you don't care, right? If you don't measure it, you don't care. And so going back to the conversation about planning and being strategic, identify goals and measure them. Hold yourself accountable. Share your results. Did you have the impact that you intended? If not, why not? Make sure that you are learning along the way. Iterate. Be transparent. But what happens is somebody spends the money. Nobody knows what happens to the money. You see some stuff. And here we are back at square one. We've, spent down $5 million, but nobody knows what the heck came out of it other than some pants.
And then they say, and then they have the excuse, right? To say, oh, that didn't work.
That didn't work.
So then we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that again.
Right. That's right. Yeah. It's total BS. It's total BS.
Yes, totally. And I almost feel like we need to learn, right?
Yeah.
People that work or that have some like level of influence in certain spheres, to learn how to find opportunity to infuse metrics into the work we do, whether it's paid or voluntary, so that way, because I feel like that helps push the needle.
Absolutely.
That
helps to model what we want to see. We have to hold ourselves accountable as well. There just needs to be greater accountability across the board. We have to normalize it and standardize it. Because otherwise, how are we going to, we talk about moving the needle and closing the gap. How will we even know?
Yeah, totally. Number 9, make a long-term commitment. No band-aids. We're sick of band-aids, right?
Yeah. We want a long-term commitment. Like, put it in your budget. Your long-term, but your 5-year budget, your 10-year budget. So don't make a commitment. And, I'm working on another piece because, now I'm fired up. But, make a long, because here's the thing that we know, right? Here's the thing that we know. By 2045, this country is going to be majority minority, with Latinos primarily driving that growth, right? Black people have essentially been 12 to 14% of the population for the last 400 years. That's not changing. Brown folks are driving this surge. So by 2045, we're going to be majority minority. And guess what, Fortune 500 company? If you want to be viable and sustainable in a 2045 world where not only is America a majority minority, but all the developing economies around the world are brown or black, like there are no white emerging economies. The emerging economies are, these are in a COVID land, God knows, but Brazil, South Africa, India, China. These are Asian, Black and brown communities. So it's not only about being sustainable in America, which is going to be majority minority within 20 years. If you've got a long-term vision for your organization, you better make racial equity and racial justice a priority, because otherwise you're going to lose competitive advantage.
Yes, absolutely. And it's also about investing in a sustainable framework in all industries too. When we're talking and also about creating a pipeline, it's like investing in people. It's just really about investing in people, because this is the future workforce, the future leaders, the future everything.
That's right. You think they see, but corporations are so short-sighted. It's all about kind of, shareholders and shareholder distributions, and it's the shareholder model that, makes workers secondary and profits primary. And that model is broken, and it needs to be dismantled.
And that affects everybody. That whole framework is just not good for society. Period.
No, it's not. Not.
And then, last but not least, act more, talk less.
Yeah, baby. Act more, talk. I'm so sick of, when people reach out. We're having this, Sarah. You and I talked about this last week. Like, we're having a roundtable discussion about what? Like, look at the notes from the last roundtable discussion that we had 3 years ago, or when Trayvon Martin was killed, or when Sandra Bland was killed, or when there was a Pulse shooting, or when there. Look at those notes. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, we're not saying anything different. Same shit.
Yeah.
Like, stop.
Same needs. Same concerns. Same worries.
Same agenda. Rehash, recycle, rotated. Like, I am moving forward, being a better steward of my time. You want me to show up? You can pay me, but otherwise, no, I'm not showing up at your panel to talk about the challenges facing Black and brown people. I wrote a report about it. Read it.
Right.
Come to me when you got a budget. Come to me when you got some money. Come to me when you're ready to invest. And I'm not talking about pennies. So that's where I am. Like, no, I'm not. I will talk through my thought leadership. That's where you will find my voice. It isn't for general consumption. But no, I'm not showing up on your panel so that we can talk about the challenges and potential solutions. I want to see the solutions. I'll be a part of those. You want to hire me to help you to implement that? Let's talk about it. But if you want to bring me on your panel so that I can educate you on something that you should have the initiative to educate yourself on, no, I'm not interested in that.
Yes. And I think that's I think now with, the internet and Google and so many resources out
there,
it's like, please, I agree with you. Panels are the only panels I've participated in, I want to say in the last 5 months, since this whole thing have been community driven.
Yes.
Initiatives to really, and of course, behind the scenes, when I called in to fill in the checkbox to hear the voice of minority business enterprises, and then I'm going to lay it on thick too, right?
Right, exactly.
Because we're fresca, right? Because I'm fresca like you.
We can't help ourselves.
We can't help ourselves. You have with the fresh mouth. Yeah,
that's right.
But straight into the point, I want to say that in the last month, I felt more confident in that I'm not going to be, how do you say, it's almost like ridiculed, when you voice an opinion and they're like, oh, there she goes again, you know? So that part, at least, I feel has felt more liberating, and that I hope it's helping, but that's why I needed to have you today, so you can really, express yourself fully about all of these things, that are so critical, and they're there. This is, again, not too complicated. I feel like you've given us a roadmap, to share with others when that question comes, but where do we start? Well, here you go.
Right, here you
That's
go.
it.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Exactly. You have funding to
Yes.
support Black organizations or
Yes.
Black initiative or brown
Yeah.
communities or,
That's right.
or marginalized and
That's right.
underserved,
That's right.
populations. Well, here you go.
Here you go. Yeah.
This is it. This
You're
is it
exactly.
right
And
here.
I got some feedback on that, and they're like, it's not even just for a fund; it's for any initiative that's being deployed in Black or brown communities. I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
Yes. So I shared it with people in the corporate sector. And in the philanthropic, like a philanthropic giant here in Central Florida.
Gosh, God bless them.
Yeah,
Honey. Yeah, I appreciate that. But it's like, let's put it out there. And I am with you in terms of evaluating you want to be a good steward of your voice, and you don't want fear to lead, and you want to be intentional, and you want to be strategic. But these days, I'm like, my voice is my gift. I'm never going to be the company girl. I'm never going to be the institutional. I'm never going to be the institutional whatever.
Or in the clique. Or in the clicky.
Yes, baby. That's clicky. That's it. And I think for a long time, I lamented not being in the clique because I have zero desire, but I lamented not getting the benefit associated. I thought that I would be able to get the benefits in terms of resources and access of not being in the clique.
No, it's a facade.
It is a facade. And I'm making peace with is that I might never be able to access those things, that big payday or the invitation to the swanky event or the inclusion and the leaders of a leader, whatever.
of America.
The leaders of the Atlanta leaders. Or American, you know what I mean? Like those, where it depends on you got to be a C-suite or a C-suiter to get. I'm never going to be included or invited into those spaces. But my voice matters in a different way. And so if that's what God has given me, my voice, I really have to make peace with the fact that those things I'll probably never access. And I have to be okay with that. Because God continues to sustain people like you and me despite our big mouths.
Yeah.
Right? In spite of our big
Thank God.
ourselves.
Thank God for his mercy. Because Lord knows I don't.
Yes. So obviously we're doing something right. We're going to keep running on this set now. And
here we go.
Here we go.
But listen, from one freca to another, I love you.
I love you, baby.
I know you're like up to your eyeballs, these days. But I'm so glad that we made this time to really get into it. To really get into it.
Always, always. I love you so much. And thank you for always pushing me and holding me accountable and being my sounding board. Love you so much.
I love you too, Kelly. Bye-bye.
Bye, baby.
This concludes this episode of I Have Something to Say. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. We're on Spotify and iTunes as well. There's more to come next week. And remember, if you have something to say, it's time to speak up.